Hey everyone. So today I actually wanted to talk about the DAO that I've been kind of talking about in the Polkadot Study Telegram group about being like a great first project for Solidity PVM. And I took a stab at it today, like, what would this DAO look like? And what you see on the screen here, it's an open development DAO. So this open development idea, it's something that I've shared in the past. Um, I need to clean it up a little bit, but it's the idea that you're developing out in the open. Development teams are developing like on Telegram, and the discussions happening on Telegram. The meetings are recorded and they're uploaded to YouTube, things like that. So it's a new paradigm in work for software development. It's not only like open source software development, it takes it to the next level, right? So how would one create a DAO around that concept of open development? I think it would work very well. Okay. So this is a bit of the brainstorm here. The end goal for this project would be that we have a DAO written in one or more Solidity smart contracts running on Polkadot that we can actually, leverage and use in the Polkadot study group. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to necessarily have to be for the entire Polkadot study group. It could be like a sub group in the Polkadot study group that we trial it out and get feedback on and iterate on it. I don't expect it to be like 100% in the beginning, and but get it to a point, slowly iterate and get it to a point where it's effective, where it's actually working, and then we can share it with other communities, small communities, open source development communities in the ecosystem, and have them use it, have them test drive it and give us feedback, iterate on it and improve it. So ideally, once we've iterated enough and we have something that works, that not only works but works very well, which I think this can get to that point where it will work very well for small communities, like almost like microservices for software development, right? Like before we had monolith, like Polkadot Treasury, like monolith, and we're trying to like break it up into these bounties and things like that. But it's just, I don't know. I don't think it's working for developers. Like developers still have trouble. Um, Getting funding for their project. It's not that easy. It can be intimidating. Yes, you do see like big projects going out there on Polkadot Treasury, but what about like grassroots, like small experiments? That's what Kusama was intended for, experimental stuff, right? And that never happened. We never lived up to it. So let's live up to it. I think that this DAO, at the end of the day, it could roll up to Kusama in some manner, whether it's directly connected to the treasury or a bounty that is funded by Kusama Treasury, like, yeah, we could go in that direction. That would be like long-term goal. What's long-term goal? I don't know. Maybe we can achieve this in a year, right? Let's see. So technically, we should have good design principles here. There's two ways we could go about it. The easier way might be to lump everything up into one Solidity smart contract. So I might go down that route just if it's easier. But if I get technical feedback from the community, like if we have some good architects in the community that could help out with creating a multi-smart contract design, I think that would be cool, especially if it makes more sense to be more than one smart contract. So the design that you have here today, it's actually two smart contracts. Let's get started here. So the first one is the actual DAO smart contract. That's the smart contract, the Solidity smart contract that will be managing the DAO committee members. It'll manage some pot of funds for the DAO, and it'll have the the proposed projects. So when teams want to propose a new project, there will be a storage item for that that will hold the proposed projects, right? They haven't been approved yet. They have to be voted upon. And then finally, if they're voted, and they pass, then they're considered an approved project, right? So there's going to be more here. I'm still brainstorming this, like, but at least this is like a first draft. And in terms of methods in the smart contract, we need to set the committee members, and we need also methods around like managing the committee members. Initially, we should have committee members. That so there's like more like, yeah, there's a bit of control there. But as we evolve this DAO, we can come up with better solutions for like um, maybe like voting on the committee members or uh, even removing actually that the idea, the end goal here is actually to remove the committee members and replace it with AI agents. And yeah, that's actually part of the puzzle here to create. But that would be later. First, like let's architect a DAO, right? And then we need a method to like initialize the pot of fund in some sort of way and disperse payouts. So this actually needs a heck of a lot more thought. I we could start with MVP, like just like hello world payouts, where if a project gets approved for a certain amount, you got the payout based on milestone or a full payout or something that we can hit the ground running. We don't need to like overthink this, but ideally, I would like to make this a little bit more better for software development teams. Like, in fact, it would be great if we could have a weekly payout, right? If developers, grassroots developers, they're actually building meaningful projects for the ecosystem, and we see that they're contributing in a meaningful way on a weekly basis because it is open development, so we can actually see this stuff like committed on GitHub. We can see the discussions on Telegram, and if it looks good, thumbs up or thumbs down based on some type of voting mechanism or some AI component, they get the weekly payout, right? So there could be different development modes that I do imagine that like there would be like perhaps there could be several development modes, and when you propose a project, you can choose which development mode your team wants, right? You could have chaotic development mode, you could have continuous development mode, you could have like milestone based development mode. So we could get creative with the development mode, and based on the development mode, your payouts will be different. Um, so that's also something to like really think about. Like, there's so much that could be done with this, right? But we got to start with the basics. Um, proposing a project. So when we propose a project, there's a few things. The project's going to have a lot more requirements than what's on here, but high level, a project needs to adhere to an existing key result, right? Think OKRs. And that's going to come next. I'm going to talk about the OKR stuff. So this is interesting. A project needs to adhere to an existing key result. We're going to discuss that. A project needs to have its own set of OKRs, right? This, I think this is big. I think that it's not a bad ask to ask teams to uh, agree on a set of OKRs for that project. Maybe it's one OKR, right? For that project, and the key results need to make sense, and the deliverables and in that project should line up to the key results, right? So that needs to be designed um, in this whole solution, whether it's in a separate smart contract or whatever it may be, right? Ideally, this is where, like, if we want to really design a great solution here, ideally a team could spin up a DAO based off of their own OKR, right? And I need to put more thought into this because how can we architect the contracts so that this recursion is possible, right? So um, that's where I need to give a little bit more thought, and definitely welcome to get feedback from you all if you have any ideas around that. Because say the project takes off and it's successful, right? In my opinion, the project should be able to spin its own uh, DAO. It should be able to uh, have like some funds, right? If it's a success, then why not give it the ability to create sub projects, right? So maybe it's like this infrastructure level project and it succeeded, right? The community like really loved it, and uh, they need a UI, right, for that infrastructure level project. So because that project got its credibility, then let it continue, right? It got its credibility on chain, let it continue, right? Let it continue spawning off and creating an open company. right? So it's open development, open company. Maybe that's how the open companies get started, right? You start with a seed. And then, of course, you should be able to vote on proposed projects in order to approve them, right? So we need to add some voting methods, how to vote on a project. And in terms of initializing a fund, this is where also we need to give it some thought. I believe there's more than what I just wrote here. There's different approaches we can take here, right? So there's more than just these two bullet points, but what I could think of so far is, create a pot of funds, right? Like um, maybe we apply for a bounty and we bootstrap the DAO initially with some initial supply of DOT, right? Or somebody is kind enough to like throw some DOT into this pot of funds and we start with that, right? And so that's where maybe it gets, if it's like not a large amount enough to like fund a project, maybe that's where it's like experimental. We start with a Polkadot study group, and we start with a small amount and just to see if the process works, if the team feels like it's working. Um, so that's one way. And then once we prove that it's effective, I'm sure that we can get funding uh, to create, a good size pot of funds. Um, there's probably other ways. Maybe we could even directly connect it to the treasury somehow. Uh, Maybe create a bounty and connect the bounty to this. Yeah, there's different ways we could think about that. Definitely open to feedback. And then there's this novel kind of way where it's like you for each project you mint its own token. So like there's a concept of the DAO, right? And the DAO will have its OKR, and then projects will get proposed and they'll say, okay, I'm proposing to build this project and it'll fit under the KR, the key result of this key result of the DAO, right? So the DAO itself, we could start with the DAO minting its own token that represents the DAO. And then what we could do is we could have a project that's, a project have its own token, right? Um, so this gets interesting because part of the pipeline that I see that would be essential is that when the DAO creates its own token, and when the project creates its own token, immediately it should go on a DEX, in my opinion, because it's open development. So as the community sees the team developing and going towards the project's deliverables, I believe that's going to create value for the token, right? So that's an interesting. I think this is interesting. Love to hear feedback on that. Which one you prefer, and if there's other ideas as well, creative ideas. We could get really creative here, and maybe this is a one of those modes thing, right? Where it's like, okay, project, like which one do you want? Do you want like the static, like okay, you go for the DAO's token, or do you want your own token, or maybe we could do something like that too, something creative. Um, So the other smart contract that I see, but I could be completely wrong, is a smart contract is dedicated to OKRs, right? So we're really being like in terms of design, it's like this one's dedicated to the DAO, right? It's all about the DAO, whereas this one is OKR, right? Everything that has to do with OKR. Uh, I don't know yet. I'm not sold yet on how this is architected. If anybody has any ideas, that'd be great. So the storage of this contract, it would have the OKR, right? So objectives. So a DAO could have more than one objective, right? Like ideally, like I don't know, like three objectives, 3 to 5, right? Um, and then each objective can have its own set of key results. And then each key result will have its associated project ID, approved project ID, right? So the question here is, in terms of my design here, does this make sense? Because the idea would be when we approve a project up here in our DAO contract, it has to have an associated OKR, right, that it belongs to. So when we propose a project, we also have to propose it with an OKR, right, that it's going to go under. So does it make sense the way that we're architecting here, where here it's just going to hold and storage the actual ID, the project ID? That's from the other contract, right? Uh, but yeah, we can think about that. So an example, here's an example where in this case, there's objective number one for the DAO. Key result number one has no projects. Key result number two has one project, right? Key result three has none. Key result four has two. So that could happen, right? Which is opportunity, right? Some other team might come in and say, oh, okay, there's no projects for key result number one, and that's really important. So let's come up with a project that will drive the results for that, right? So interesting idea. Um, and then the methods for this contract would be to create an objective for the DAO or for project. So remember what I said about a project should have its own OKRs that it it works off of, right? So that's something that I need to give a little bit more thought also to make this work for both. Um, so yeah, I'd love to get some feedback on that. And then so yeah, so you can create an objective, create a key result, and then add a project to an existing key result. So keyword definition, a project under the context of open development DAO is akin to an OKR initiative. So yeah, that's where I was studying the OKRs, right, and the framework and everything and how effective it is. And I believe it was first implemented in a semiconductor company called Intel, which isn't doing very well right now. If you look at the stock market, interesting, right? Like, I mean, you want to adopt a framework where it's like it succeeded. Like in one way, I think it succeeded. I think that can't remember who created it. It was like was it something Doer? His name was Doer that created OKRs, and um, he was saying that OKRs aren't the holy grail, right? It's not going to solve everything for your company. Like your company's management team is also super important, right? So one could say that okay, the reason Intel isn't doing that great is perhaps because management isn't that great. Like I heard that they're trying to get a new CEO or something, and they can't find one, right? Uh, so we can't blame it on OKRs, but Google used OKRs and Google scaled and succeeded very well because of OKRs. So that's an example there of like scaling, right? With OKRs. So, but I think that the fact that it first got used in a semiconductor company is pretty cool because like we're trying to attempt to use it in a blockchain uh, ecosystem. So, where it's like infrastructure level uh, code and complexity. So I think it's a great like framework to use because it aligns everyone, right? So like we can have OKRs and then sub OKRs and so on, and it's all aligned under like an umbrella and. All of a sudden, we have a direction as a community, and you can have sub communities and so on, right? So, how do the objectives get accomplished, right? They get accomplished at its essence via the initiatives, which is essentially what these projects are. Each project is kind of like an initiative, a task that will drive the key result, right? And if we make sure that the key results are on par, uh, that they're getting achieved, then the objective will be accomplished, right? So, really interesting concept here. So then I took some further notes. You can read this if you want. Like some problems that we're going to have to tackle, right? Sybil, we need to build a solution that's Sybil resistant in terms of voting and such. So we're going to have to think about that, uh, how we want the voting mechanism to be, right? There's different ways we can handle that. There could be another project that we build to create a socially verified community with NFTs or something that would be fun that we could do, or everybody has equal voting power. Like, but even that one isn't Sybil resistant because you can just spawn a bunch of accounts, right? So we will need to figure this out. There's different ways we can solve that. Another problem is how to prevent a whale from coming in and overpowering the voting. So this is where it's like if everybody has equal voting. Um, then we could prevent that. Or if we in the beginning we have like special committee and you have to be part of the committee to vote, right? Like uh we could do that. I don't. that's probably not the greatest idea, right? But like if you're contributing in the community, right, in the Telegram, you're having discussions, you're partaking in discussions, like you should have more involvement in the community, in my opinion. Um, so we'll have to look at how to solve this. Um, what else? Later iteration, pre-compile into NFT fractionalization palette, initialize DAO and sub DAOs with an NFT that is fractionalized to create a token for the. Oh yeah, this is something creative. Like this would be pretty cool, right? Like what if you? It's a great way of like kicking off a DAO, right? Like imagine you're going to create a token for the DAO, right? Why not create it off of an NFT, right? Like the NFT is such a community thing. It's like this is the NFT that represents the DAO, right? And you're gonna fractionalize it to create the DAO's token. I think that would be an awesome way of kicking off a DAO, right? Or sub DAOs. So that could be something that, with the PVM Solidity work, there will be pre-compiles. We could create our own and contribute. So a lot of creative stuff that can be done there. Um, let's see here, some other notes. Yeah, so then these are just my gibberish, my notes and things like that. But ideally, where I want this to head is for the AI agent uh, to to manage the DAO. So it says here, AI agent MVP should be able to manage the DAO by getting the community to vote via Telegram and X links. Like that's hello world, right? Like that's MVP, right? Just the most basic thing. Like it wouldn't even need to be an AI, right? It just needs to be a bot. Okay, start there. But then further down the road, AI agent will be able to execute on behalf of the DAO. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, for example, the AI agent will be able to manage the funds, review deliverables. So once the project's completed, see if it actually aligns with OKR. The AI agent should be able to do that, no problem, because this can be measured, right? Like totally this can be measured because of OKRs. It can be measured, right? Because this is only the beginning, this OKR stuff. Okay, once we start we complete that as an MVP, we have this OKR stuff working, we have a DAO that works, then let's start throwing KPIs in there, right? Because KPIs, great metrics, right? Because that's the stuff that the AI agent will be able to look at and work off of, among several other things, right? So uh, totally possible, but this is much later. So just my notes. The only thing here, though, is that portion of uh, making it recursive, right? That a project should be able to spin off their own DAO. And I have to give that more thought. This is where I started creating another version. Um, another version here. It's the idea that a DAO could potentially equal a project, right? And a project is a DAO. So I'll have to give it more thought, but that's where I am. I'd love to get your feedback on all of this. Okay. Codename Hot Pot. So yeah, looking forward to your feedback. Please, your feedback in a Telegram.